You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for a successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Hello everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. What I would like to talk about today is people that don't necessarily want to join me or you. Absenteeism. Team members that consistently not turn up to work. So I want you to lie back and imagine yourself. It's early morning, your alarm's just gone off. However, the sound was different to your normal alarm. I think it was your WhatsApp ping or your SMS ping. And that sense of dread starts to develop inside you. You know who it's going to be and you know why they're contacting you. Yes, you look at the screen and yet again, this team member who regularly calls in sick is yet again sick. You've got very little notice. You've only got a few minutes to try to get yourself sorted so you can try to get through the day as well as possible. I hope I have set the scene for dread. Many of you will know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, I just want to mention first up, I'm not talking about legitimate sick leave. I'm talking about absenteeism. And what absenteeism is regular days off for no legitimate reason. It's always a very difficult thing to try to determine when someone is legitimately sick or whether they are practicing absenteeism, because the reasons they call are for things like headache and gastro and legitimate health reasons. And if you were to ask for a work certificate, they will likely be able to supply something to you as well. However, you are left with that feeling, I don't think this person is sick all the time. So how am I supposed to manage this? Of course, if you were to sit down with the person and say, I'm concerned about the number of days off that you're having, they would likely say, but I'm legitimately sick every single time. I've supplied you with a work certificate every single time. I'm entitled to take these number of days off. What are you supposed to do? Because absenteeism is actually a symptom of something deeper going on. This person, for whatever reason, finds it difficult to turn up to all of the required days for work. And so when we have got somebody who is practicing absenteeism, our first go-to place is to tackle the absenteeism itself and try to find out whether that person was legitimately sick or not. Was that funeral legitimate? Did they really need to go and spend time with their sick relative? I encourage you to go one step deeper. Let's have a look at all of the reasons why some people may practice absenteeism. And instead of looking for a solution around the absenteeism, we're going to start looking for a solution around the reasons they're feeling they need to have that particular day off. One of the things I want to bring up first of all is my thought around medical certificates. When I owned my practice from 2003 through to 2013, I certainly had a couple of team members that were practicing absenteeism. I did have doubts whether they were legitimate reasons that they couldn't come in or not. My thoughts around the doctor's certificates, because that is a bit of a go-to place. Well, prove it to me, go get a doctor's certificate. Prove you've got a migraine. Get in your car when you can't see properly and go get a doctor's certificate. My approach to medical certificates was, okay, let's presume this person isn't legitimately sick. Now go off and get a work certificate. And they go to their doctors and they say, I have a headache. I have a migraine. I have gastro. What's the doctor going to do? They're going to believe their patient is suffering from these things, and so they'll certainly give them a work certificate. Sometimes people mock up work certificates. How many of us actually ring up the GP to make sure that particular clinic, that particular doctor is in existence? So the work certificate can be obtained whether there is legitimate illness or not. We like to think to ourselves, well, at least it makes them go out and do something and not enjoy the whole day off. They have to go out and get this certificate, so they have to make an appointment time, wait in the doctor's waiting room, lie to the doctor in order to get that certificate. So at least we're inconveniencing this employee to some degree. They've certainly inconvenienced us. But let's imagine the other side of the coin, because they're either legitimately sick or they're not legitimately sick. So let's have a look at the person that legitimately has a migraine, legitimately has gastro. Are we really going to make that ill person struggle to get to the doctor? They possibly, if they've got a migraine, they can't drive, so they're going to have to get somebody else to drive them. With a gastro patient, they're never going to be able to go out into the world. They need to be close to their bathroom. And so for those people that are legitimately sick, I want them to stay home and get well as soon as possible so they can come into work the next day. So with work certificates, they're either too easy to obtain if it's not a legitimate cause, or the process of actually getting it will hinder the healing and recovery of the team member who really is ill. So I just didn't even concern myself with the medical certificates at all. So push them to the side. Let's relieve ourselves of that anxiety around the medical certificates. And instead, let's go through a few reasons why employees may call in sick on a regular basis without any legitimate cause. Well, one of the first reasons is maybe that team member is felt put upon in the team environment. Are they feeling a little bit harassed or bullied or under a large amount of pressure that they can't consistently move through every single day? And this quite often happens in environments where there is micromanagement at play. Micromanagement is where you heavily scrutinize the performance of a team member and you're on their tail all the time. And in those kind of situations, I've actually been a micromanager myself. For all the people out there that have been reading my blogs over the years and participating in my team trainings, they would know that I was a terrible micromanager. And then I went through the process of actually being micromanaged. It was horrendous. So I'll tell you what my situation was. I was working at a dental practice. I loved working there. And then we were getting busy enough that we were going to get another receptionist on board to join me. We got on board Meg, and that's actually her real name. She knows I use this example a lot. We got Meg on board, totally delightful gal. She was experienced in dental, had many years of history in it. I didn't need to train her in any of that. All I needed to do was train her in how we did things here at our practice. This is how we use Dentiful Windows. She hadn't used Dentiful Windows before. These are our practice processes. And so I went down the path of training her, and for some reason, I just never stopped. She got to know how to use the software. She got to know all of our systems and processes. However, I just kept at her, do things this way. This is how we do it here. And one of the things that I used to do, which I love using as a bit of an example so you can know how horrendous I was to work with, was, you know how in the dental software when you're making a dental appointment time for a recall, and quite often we put the letters RC in as an abbreviation for recall. Well, I always used to put in capital R and capital C. Meg, however, she just put in a little r and a little c. And for some reason, I thought that was behaviour that I felt should have been modified. And so I'd say to her, you know, Meg, I think it's going to be easier for everyone, so they're seeing the same thing, to use capital RC rather than lowercase rc. Could you do that? That'd be great. Thanks. She must have spent most of her day rolling her eyes at me, because I think back now and I'm embarrassed and ashamed of the way I used to treat her. Anyway, months later, I ended up leaving this lovely place, not because I didn't like it, but I was given an opportunity to go into sales, and I worked at a dental sales company. And my boss there was completely lovely and delightful. However, he was a micromanager. He was so busy scrutinizing my every step, even when I was parceling out something, and I would write the name and address of the practice that we were sending it to on the front of the express post bag, and he would come to me and say, "Are you sure that's the right address? Is that the name of the practice?" And I'm like, yeah, I just processed this order. Of course, I kept my mouth shut and I was very polite about it. But if I was on the phone to a client trying to detail a product, he would come up behind me, he'd write on my pad beside me, "Say this, say this." I was actually supposed to be out on the road with this particular company, but over the 6 months that I was working there, I was less and less inclined to go out, because what I found was 3 things over a 6-month period of being micromanaged. Number one, my confidence took an enormous battering. I didn't feel it at the time, but I felt it in terms of things like that, where I was supposed to be out on the road, and I was so desperate to get out on the road. That's the reason why I got this job. I was so appealed to this job. But then as the weeks went by, I was less and less inclined to go out there, because I probably won't be any good at it anyway. So my self-confidence was low. The second thing that happened was my short-term memory went out the window. So all of a sudden I found myself having trouble remembering what happened last week, 3 days ago, yesterday. And I thought, gosh, that's just so unlike me. And the third thing that happened, I realised when I was out on the road, I had to find a route from A to B. Back in those days, there was no iPhones. I am quite old. I had to get out the Melways, the Victorian Road Directory, and look for where I was supposed to go and try to map between the 2 points the route to get there. Do you think I could? I couldn't. That might be quite usual for many young people nowadays, because we're so reliant on Google Maps. We never actually went through that process of mapping out a course ourselves. But back in my day, we always had our Melways. The Melways sat like on the back seat, so it was always easy to grab, so you can find out how to get to places. And I just couldn't believe I was having such enormous trouble trying to muddle through this big problem. So my problem-solving skills went out the window as well. And it was at that point that I thought, oh my God, I know exactly what it's like to be Meg, because I'm being treated now the way I used to treat her. So every now and again, my previous boss would ring me as a bit of a joke, say, when do you want to come back? This one time that she rang and she said again as a joke, when do you want to come back? I said to her, actually, I would love to, if that would be okay. And she said, great, let's organise it. We got off the phone. 5 minutes later, she rings me back again. We have a problem. And I said, let me guess. Is the problem that Meg doesn't want me back? And she said, yes. I said to her, I know why. I briefly told my ex-boss what I thought the issue was, and I said, can you ask Meg if she's willing to go out for a coffee with me? Just a quick coffee. Lovely Meg, beautiful human being. She said yes. We went out for coffee. I described to her what had happened to me over the past 6 months. And I said, is this what I did to you? And she said yes. I was relieved that she said yes, because this was a wonderful opportunity for me to get rid of a characteristic of myself that I, having experienced it, truly didn't want it to continue on as part of who I was, especially if I was going to be working with people, being their manager, superior, what have you. I didn't want to have that kind of impact on somebody else's life. So she and I developed a plan, which I'll talk to you about another day, on how to get over my micromanaging ways, and Meg played a beautiful role in that with me. So if the reason somebody is calling in sick on a semi-regular basis and you're having questions about whether that's legitimate or not, have a think about, who is this person working with? Because I tell you, fronting up every morning to a negative working environment, a micromanaging working environment, an environment where you may be harassed. So the energy it takes within you to manage all of that on top of rolling out your responsibilities for the day, it takes a lot of energy and it gets too much every now and again. And every now and again, you wake up and you just feel that little bit less enthusiastic that morning, and that's all it takes. Or maybe you are feeling just under the weather and that's all it takes. Or you go, why bother today? I can either put up with all that today or I could just have a day off from it. It's so much easier for that person to quickly call in sick and just stay home for the day so they don't have to contend with all of that. So if you think that is possibly a reason, of course, the best way to determine exactly where somebody is in terms of their happiness turning up to work every day is to ask them directly and create a safe environment for them to share that information and be frank with you without there being any cost to that. But what you can do to make sure that no current team member or future team member feels that sense of harassment in the workplace or that sense of overmanagement in the workplace is to foster a healthy team culture. This is going to win moving forward no matter what. It doesn't just get rid of absenteeism as an issue. This is just good for any working environment. It promotes a happier team, but a more loyal team and a higher performing team as well. Create an environment where your team members are supported and educated and encouraged to feel happy and connected to one another. Create the kind of environment where somebody will wake up in the morning and have the prospect of coming into work and go, groovy, I like those people. Groovy, I like my work. It's also useful just to check in one-on-one with your team members every now and again. I never used to formalise this in meetings or performance reviews or staff feedback sessions. I used to just take the opportunities when they presented themselves. Quite often you'll have a team member that has an extra few minutes, they've done their stereo, the next patient's not here quite yet, you know they're in the surgery by themselves. Just pop in, say, hey, how are you going? You enjoying everything? Is there anything of concern? Is there anything going on that you love? Anything that's going on that you hate? So just check in with them one-on-one as the universe provides opportunities to do so. Ask them the question, is everything groovy with you? I just want to check in, make sure everything's happy. And then just be quiet, let them speak. Even if they don't start coming up with things at the very start, you doing that on a regular enough basis will provide them with, in the future, kind of permission. Oh, they do keep checking in with me every now and again. I have become concerned about this thing. I reckon next time they ask me if everything's groovy, it's going to be okay for me to bring up that thing, and then hopefully that thing will have a solution, and then it's no longer a problem anymore. Then it's no longer a thing anymore. So checking in one-on-one every now and again is a great idea. If you're way too busy and you never get the opportunity, then absolutely formalise it. Put a note in your diary as a manager, as the owner of the business, that every week or every fortnight or every month, depending on how many team members you have, you're going to pull one aside and just have a chat with them, make sure everything's groovy on their end. Now, another reason why people may be practicing absenteeism is because they actually have legitimate mental health problems. Maybe they're stressed out. Maybe they're suffering burnout. Maybe they've got depression. Maybe they've got anxiety. Maybe they've got any number of the things that make it difficult for some just to move through the daily routine on a regular basis. And what my theory is around that is if someone has got a headache and can't work, or gastro and can't work, or they have the flu and they can't work. What if they're suffering with their anxiety terribly so that day and they can't work? It's all illness. So I would suggest to you to consider offering the chance for your team members to use a couple of days a year from their sick days as mental health days. If someone is struggling, let your team members know that you also consider someone moving through peak sense of anxiety, that's also a good enough reason in your book to have a day off. Now, the advantage to this is that this day doesn't have to come by surprise to you in the early hours of the morning. You can say to them, I can see that you've been stressed, or they've come to you and they said, I think I'm suffering a bit of burnout. I think I'm just getting overwhelmed. I've got so many things happening on at work and at home and everything else, and I'm struggling. And you say, okay, why don't you take a day off just for your mental health at a time that suits you and the practice? Let's try to find a day for you now. And that day, they can actually have off guilt-free. So it can actually be more of a self-care day, because if the absenteeism is because they're so anxious or stressed out that they can't turn up to work on every now and again, what is often the case is that person calls up sick for a non-legitimate reason, because they don't feel like saying burnout or anxiety is a good enough reason. They call in sick, but then they feel guilty and they can't have that day to fully bounce back because they're feeling guilty the whole day, instead of just trying to enjoy the day and get back to a space where they feel strong enough for the next working day. Because unless there's a team member that truly has disengaged from the rest of the team and the bosses, they don't care about them anymore, that team member quite often thinks to themselves, I don't care that I've left the team in the lurch. They deserve it. But other people who do enjoy their work and do really like the team, but for mental health reasons feel they can't turn up that particular day, they feel a lot of guilt. They feel so guilty that they have let the team down, that you're going to have to go calling up all the temp agencies, possibly try to muddle through the day with one team member down. And that day off isn't going to be as effective for them to bounce back as if they didn't have any of the guilt that was attached to it. So when you have got people that have said to you, I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed, offer them a day off from their sick leave. They get paid, but you can plan for it. You can say, well, let's do it this day because we can get blah, blah to come in and help you out or stand in for you. Or we have arranged a temp so we know we're covered. So you can have the day off guilt-free because we're going to be just fine. Let's go into disengagement as a reason for absenteeism. So disengaged people no longer care an enormous amount about the practice, about the patients, or about the team. They may care given a different environment, but in this particular environment with their particular relationships with that particular team, they have become disengaged. They get disengaged for all manner of reasons, and we'll cover that in a future podcast, what actually contributes to team disengagement. But disengagement also has the symptom of a particular team member, all of a sudden their performance starts to lag. All of a sudden, rather than coming in at 8, they're coming in at a couple of minutes past 8. Rather than leaving at 5:30, they're leaving just shy of 5:30. They're leaving some of the tasks that are group tasks up to everybody else. They never do them themselves. And they're never tending to put in their best effort. For these team members, it is pretty easy for them to call in sick because they just really don't care that much. There's not a huge cost to them. If they inconvenience the team, inconvenience the boss, then I don't know, whatever, I don't care. It's not my problem, that's their problem. You can play the script out in your brain, can't you? I don't care what I put them through. I'm going to turn around and have a fantastic day. I might go to the movies, might go for a walk on the beach. It's going to be awesome. So what can we do when we've got disengaged people? Obviously, if it's to a degree where they need to go through a proper performance review process, then you go ahead and do that. But as a general approach to the environment that you create, you can do things that encourage engagement rather than trying to address disengagement when it happens. When it happens, you have to do it. But let's do what we can to encourage engagement. And so that looks like involving your team in the practice goals, like where are we going to go, how are we going to get there, what role will each one of us play in getting there. Involve everybody so they feel part of the purpose of the practice. They feel part of the journey of the practice. Also involve them in terms of asking for their ideas. What else can we do to make our new patient experience even better than it is? What else can we do to better engage our patients in their treatment plan, to educate them about what we've just spoken to them about? What else can we do to celebrate our wins more so as a team? So get their ideas. When people are involved to that degree, they really start to care about one another and about the success of the business itself, because they have become involved in that process, engaged in that process. Also, consistently provide opportunities for further training. When you look at these Facebook chat rooms with dental personnel, it is amazing to me how often I do read the value that they hold in continuing education, continued training, skills development. Many people out there really want to improve what they do. And for sure, in Daniel Pink's book called Drive, he identifies that we have 3 main drivers that drive us as individuals. Number 1 is autonomy, to have control over our own behaviours. And that is why micromanagement isn't always the best way, because it does take away autonomy. And when you recognise, gosh, it's one of our 3 main drivers, that's going to disengage people. The second driver is purpose, that we all want to be part of a purpose that is larger than just ourselves. And we can help create that with our practices. You know, we've got this larger purpose that is beyond just us, which is caring for our patients in the specific way that we've identified this practice will be doing it. And as a team, we're all moving towards that goal together. The third driver that Daniel Pink talks about in his book is mastery. One of our main drivers as a human being is to get better and better at what we do. And so one of the ways that you can help create engagement with your team is to provide opportunities for people to achieve mastery. So skills development, training, coaching, get all that stuff happening. You can do it online, you can do it physically, you can go off to courses, you can do so much nowadays. The internet has really awarded us the luxury of being able to tap into further training at the drop of a hat whenever it suits us. So offering opportunities for further training is a great way to keep a group of people engaged. Another reason for absenteeism is bad attitude. And certainly we've all worked with a bad attitude kind of person. So team members with bad attitudes do find it very easy to feign illness and call in sick, because team members with a bad attitude move through their working days quite differently to people who are engaged and happy in the working process. People who are engaged and happy and care about their team members and the patients and the bosses and everybody else, they get filled up by doing their job really well. They get filled up by helping fellow team members get through their days as well. They get filled up by caring for the patients and giving them a lovely experience. However, people with a bad attitude, they move through their days with a lot of resistance, a lot of resentment, a lot of dragging their feet through every responsibility, dropping responsibilities they can get away with dropping. If people aren't totally happy with their performance, I don't care. If you think badly of me, I don't care. So a bad attitude person does move through their day in a way that takes a lot more energy. They fear being found out and scrutinised. They fear being found out to be incompetent in any way, so they're battling against that. They've got they're waging a whole little war in their brain. They've got a lot of negative chitter-chatter as well, because they know that they are capable of better. They know at the core of them that they're letting themselves down. So hopefully with creating a great environment, an engaging environment, an environment free of harassment or micromanagement, will also help prevent bad attitudes from creeping in, because the rest of the team are such great performers and so happy that a bad attitude really doesn't feel comfortable that you can bring that bad attitude to the party. That's not the party for this. Where's my party of whinging, whining people? That's where I can take my bad attitude and it will be listened to and acknowledged and validated. But I can't bring my bad attitude here because everyone else here seems to be so on top of things. So bad attitude employees do find it quite easy to take a day off because they feel like they're owed it. Because their job takes from them so much in their minds, they feel like they are owed a day off just to get back to normal again so I can turn up and start complaining again the following day. So one of the things that's a dangerous thing to do within a team is to let a bad attitude team member continue on. People do have ups and downs in their life. We're allowed to be on top of our game one day and not be as much on top of our game another day if we've had stuff going on, if we're contending with a lot of stuff. But putting that to the side, we're talking about somebody that every day they turn up, they're causing trouble, they're avoiding responsibility, they're creating dramas between team members, they're not doing their job properly. That kind of situation does need to be addressed swiftly. Another reason why absenteeism may be a problem, and it can be noticed where this person hardly ever takes a day off, but this past month they've had 4. What's going on? It could be that they're actually looking for another job and they need the days off to go to job interviews. Because what the employee knows is, I can't go to my current boss and say, I'm looking for another job. Can I have an hour off on Tuesday to go to a job interview? That is not an option for them. And so if they're looking for another job and this other company only conducts their interviews during working days, during normal working hours, what else are you supposed to do? If you're brutally honest, there's a huge cost. What if you don't want this job? I've also compromised my current position. Their only other option is to call in sick. So if this is the reason that a team member is practicing absenteeism, the solution behind it is, okay, create that nice, happy, supportive environment that promotes further training and skills development and harassment-free workplace. Create this space. And despite that, someone calls in sick regularly and you think maybe the reason is because they're going for job interviews, just embrace it. Give them those days off. It's not going to go on forever because they'll find another job and move on. Because if you've created an employee-friendly work environment and someone still doesn't feel like they're the right fit for you, then that's groovy that they're moving on. That's great. Just accept those days off because soon you'll be able to replace that team member with somebody who is better suited to your organisation. And if you can imagine, if it's bad attitude person that despite discussions isn't shifting that behaviour and they're the one not turning up because they're going to job interviews, that's exactly what you want to happen. You don't want to have to get to the point where you're firing them. You want them to be able to say, not the place for me, found another position, I'm on my way somewhere else. And then again, you can find a person that's better suited to your practice moving forward. So just embrace that side of it if that's the reason for the absenteeism. The final reason that I've come up with that absenteeism could be an issue is childcare. Now, when my beautiful younger sister, Jenny, she said to me once that when your child is sick, when you're a parent and your child is sick, working parents feel guilty no matter what. They feel guilty for letting their workplace down by having to stay home for the day, or they feel guilty that they've opted to work and they've abandoned their sick child. So working parents feel guilty either way. And my suggested solution around that is just to recognise that childcare issues are a difficult situation for every parent. And they all do their very best. So if you can go through a process with all the parents of your team and help them all identify all the very many options that are out there that they can put in place, so it just reduces the likelihood or the frequency that the parents will need to call in sick on a particular morning. And if they do need to take time off for their child, do your best not to make them feel guilty, because obviously they feel guilty anyway. They don't need somebody else to add onto that. So absenteeism can be an enormous interruption to your workflow. It can cause a lot of anxiety for any given work day, and it can actually cause team disharmony as well when it's always that one person that's never turning up and everyone else has to have the burden of moving through that day understaffed. So it's good to try to avoid absenteeism in the areas that you can. A lot of that is around the environment that you create for your team that is actually preventing it from happening in the first place, rather than have it happen. And what you're trying to manage now are the impacts of the absenteeism and that particular team member. What are we going to do with them? One of the things I did do, and I think it might be more of a challenge now, I think there's a reducing pool of people to choose from when we are looking at getting temp nurses, and all of the dental assistants seem to be in very high demand at the moment. But what I used to do when I had my practice was really have a strong relationship with my temp agency, because despite everything else that you do, every now and again you're going to come across somebody who is practicing absenteeism. But beside that, you're always going to have people who have legitimate health concerns that they can't turn up to work that day. My habit was, text me. Whenever you know that you're not going to be able to come in, text me. The more time I've got to plan for it, the less I'm making decisions in that urgent space of, I've got to get somebody here in 1 hour. So give me all the time in the world by just texting me. I don't need to speak to you. I don't want you to have to put the alarm on to wake yourself up at 7 a.m. to call me if you've been suffering a migraine. Just stay asleep and try to heal. Text me anytime. And then have that relationship with your temp agency so you are at the top of their list. When you call, they're like, oh, these are one of my favourite clients. I'm going to make sure they get a temp. And the things that you can do to make sure you've got a great relationship with your temp agency is, number one, pay all your bills on time. Don't make them chase you for money. Number two, get a great reputation. I mean, all of these temp nurses go back to the agency and say what their experience was like. And you end up getting a name for either being really easy to work with or really not easy to work with, or, oh, they're awesome. I always love going to that place. So create a great system for your temps. When they come in, make sure all the team are really welcoming and happy. Make sure you want to give that person a beautiful day, well supported. And give them printouts, like have a temp printout. This is how you open the surgery. This is how you close the surgery. So create a bit of a running sheet for that temp to make it really easy for them to be able to step into the shoes of your regular dental assistant. You can always, I used to always use a temp agency as a way of recruitment. I hardly ever advertised, because I would be in a communication with the temp agency. I'd be very, very happy to pay whatever fee they determined was appropriate for me to flip someone from temp to full-time. It's usually a few $1,000s. But when you think about the amount of money, the amount of time, the amount to train, the amount it costs if you get a bad candidate and you need to fire them and get somebody new in, somebody better in, because they weren't what they promised themselves to be in the resume and all the interviews, I don't mind spending a few $1,000s. And then I've increased my worth to the temp agency as well. So again, I'm hovering at the top of their priority list. But when you get a great temp, then you can go, you really suit this place. You've been here half a dozen times. We love having you here. You love being here. Let's make it permanent. And of course, when you're looking for a temp, you go from the very first call that you make to the temp agency, you think, we want one of our great temps. Send us one of your good ones. We don't want Sally, we want Gladys. So you go from that to another hour down the track. You're like, send us anybody. I don't care. Send us anybody. And then you go from that to send us anybody, even if it's just 4 hours today. We just need somebody here. And so say to the temp agencies, have the agreement that if you've got a great temp, send them. We don't care if they're an hour late. We don't care if they need to leave an hour early to pick up children from school. We don't care if we pay for them from the moment they leave their home rather than the moment they turn up to work. We'll pay for their travel distance if they're a little bit further away. So make it as easy as possible to deal with you as a practice, and that helps. That when you're waking up that morning and you hear that little tingle in your ears and you think that must be my alarm, or I think it's WhatsApp, no, I think it's my SMS, I think someone's not turning up. It makes that moment more bearable because you know that's okay. Breathe. I can ring the temp agency. They're going to make everything all right. So taking the time for a really good backup system will serve you well going forward as well. So if you've got absenteeism as a problem in your practice, move through each of these areas. Create the kind of working environment where the bad attitude won't come to the surface, where the disengaged people will become more engaged. where for stressed people, it becomes a lovely place to go to, a place where they come to and they start feeling their stress decline, their anxiety decline because it's so lovely, and a place that people don't want to leave, and so there's no job interviews to go on. Create that beautiful environment, because the absenteeism then isn't a problem, because your solutions around it have created an opportunity for you to put systems in place that, rather than having to deal with constant absenteeism, you reduce that right down. And also, it's a huge practice builder, because you get known in the community as a magnificent practice to work for. So whenever you do need to rehire, hopefully you've got a few resumes hidden away in your drawer of people that are desperate to come and work for you guys, because you guys are ridiculously awesome. If you would like to have any further guidance in terms of how to create a great work environment, do go to my website, julieparkerpracticesuccess.com. There are some mini courses there that you can pay for around team development, but there are also a bunch of free downloads on the page that is entitled Free Resources. So have a look, see if there's anything there that can help you. Always contact me if I can be of personal one-on-one assistance to you as well. And until next time, I hope you have a groovy week. Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, you should join the club. The club members receive an online lunch and learn every week, where I share insights, systems and strategies to improve the success of your practice. These lunch and learns could not be easier. They are recordings, so you can watch them at a time that suits you. Members also have full access to the library of all of our past topics. The price is just $199 per month, and it is a powerful and effective way to upskill your team. I hope to see you there.